Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming from all over the place already. We've still letting people in. Matthew's letting people in, which is brilliant. So we'll give it a few. We're incredibly punctual. Thank you so much. Welcome back to those of you who made it last November. We've now decided we can do this. We can do November, can do May. We all know that's what's happening. And when we'll meet again, and that will be plenty. Hopefully I am and will always be in touch with you between these meetings. That would be perfect too, if you're around and willing. Please do, just a little bit of housekeeping, please do use the chat. You know, some of you will already know each other, some of you will not know each other. The chat is always useful for us. You can upload documents, you can pose questions, you can communicate with everybody or bilaterally, whichever you feel the need and desire to. That's what it should be. I do go on some of these online webinars and they don't let you see who else is in the room. They don't let you speak to each other and they don't let you pose questions. And that will not be the case here, ever. Thank you, Martin. Yeah, we've all had that frustration, I'm sure. So I think people are still coming, but let's do that first. Please zoom into the chat or dive into the chat and start telling everybody who you are. And those of you who were brilliant enough to help and come last time, welcome back. But we have new people too, and that's really brilliant. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Pauline Tiffin. I'm the editor-in-chief, not my chosen title, but apparently that's what you should call yourself in this position. And I'm going to chair today's meeting, which is, I think, a little packed because lots is happening. But we've got basically three things going on. I'm going to share a screen. It just tells you what's going on. That one, stop share that one. So our second meeting, and what we want to do today is really update, because lots is happening. And at our last meeting, I really can't say it strongly enough. All the ideas and advice, and we captured it, we wrote it in a report. I hope you all got that report. If you haven't seen the report, it was it's going to be a guiding document for some time to come and has definitely shaped what we're focusing on. But we want to do some welcomes and we want to do some goodbyes today. We want to just comment briefly on the importance of the editorial board and what we're doing there. Ellie is going to talk to us about the membership. Ellie's role is membership person. And we're also going to talk, and Eve is going to present how we're doing on open access, because it is such a big thing. We do now have a very interesting and growing global readership. So we do want to do some updates just for a few minutes. We also want to hand the floor to Anne Talentire, who's going to talk through a kind of a partnership that's emerging between the Journal of Fair Trade and the Fair Trade International Symposium, and what that's all about and what's coming up there. We're very excited about that. It makes so much sense to us, and we're glad it seems to the FTIS too. And then we were going to, because we thought we should always have a possibility to discuss things and learn things. And we had a look at our top most read articles so far in the Journal of Fair Trade. We approached the top 5 most read articles. This was one of the top 5. And we invited the folks who wrote it and who've been working on drugs policy for decades to come and tell us more about it. And they'll be given some time, and also I think some discussion, because I think it was part of a series of articles we did, which I called Atypical Fair Trade, because I'm a bit tired of coffee and cocoa and cotton, if the truth be told, and they're all in volume 2. And so we want to hand the floor over to them and some discussions about anything, cannabis, whatever they raise in your minds. And then I'm just going to wrap us up and give you a heads up on what we'll be talking about in November and some of the steps that we'll take to get there. So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to stop my sharing and come back to human being time. And I'm going to say some hellos and welcomes and farewells. So I want to kick off by saying an enormous thank you and also farewell to Sally. Hello, Sally. Sally Jennings, who joined in when we started, really, and was probably horrified, but never let me know how little I knew, and just has so patiently guided me through this. What is a journal? How do you do this? And do you need an editorial board? And this is what they do. And has been so patient and so thorough and so organized in what is, after all, a very difficult endeavor for any of you that have ever been involved in this. You will know it's truly hard to do this kind of process. And as Eleanor Cosman said to me when I was talking to her about it, she said, well, the problem is, she said, everybody is volunteering, none of us have time, and it's quite a demanding process. Eleanor has published in our journal and is a previous Fair Trade International in Germany purse campaigner. And so I have only thanks, Sally. I have only thanks, and I wish you very, very well. I don't know if you want to say anything or give us any last minute advice, please do.
I apologise, I have an extremely bad cold and sore throat, but it's been an absolute pleasure, an honour to work with Pauline and the rest of the contributors and team at the Journal of Fair Trade, and thank you, and carry on doing what you're doing. It's going great.
So with an ending of Sally, there is a beginning, and I'm so happy to introduce you to Emma, who's here, Emma Anderson. Are you able to, I think you should introduce yourself, but Emma was taking over, has officially started on May the 1st, and was one of, has been one of a group of people I've met through the recruitment process that gave me a lot of encouragement to think we were on the right track to attract people of such high caliber. So Emma, please do introduce yourself and what you're doing now.
Thank you. Well, that's a big welcome, and I've got big boots to fill, haven't I, Sally? So thank you for that. I like the analogy of a witch. That'll suit me. Yeah. So I've been publishing, a freelance publisher, for about 16, 17 years now, and I've worked on a politics journal for 15, and I'm still doing that. So I'm very excited to be working on a fully open access journal. That's my dream, and I think we need, a lot of our academic journals need to use that model. So I'm very happy and excited to be working with you, and I hope anything I can do to help out and support you, I'm here. So looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. So all of you can be in touch with Emma, and on we go. My other welcome, and I can combine it with one of our main areas of work, is strengthening and expanding our editorial board. This is a technical board. We are inviting academics with the time, with the diversity of interest, expertise to support us. And they're the ones who are taking on now in a much more proactive way and overseeing the review process. We're a single blind review process at present. I'd like to welcome, I don't know if she's here, I hope she is. I'd like to welcome our first of what I hope will be a number that we're discussing with joining Dr. Shirin Musa from State University, New York. Are you here? I can't see the whole list, but I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful to many of you who came forward and gave me introductions and made recommendations, and we're quietly following up each and every one of them. The target is, I'd like at least 10 people, hopefully 15 in the end, so that the work can be shared and we have a really good diverse range geographically, expertise wise, and on our editorial board. So please feel free to co-opt somebody or to send me a suggestion, and I will, very politely write to people, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So that's a work in progress, but we're on our way. And I'm going to seamlessly go to some more updates. So the first one that we're going to do is terribly important, and I'm going to try and share my screen for Ellie. Ellie, this is over to you.
Hi everyone. So have worked with Pauline almost since the very beginning of the Journal of Fair Trade, and worked on membership. And so I mean, as it says, since the very beginning, since the start of the Journal of Fair Trade, the vision has always been that the journal should be led by its supporters, who are individuals or organisations or institutions who come together as members, paid members, and these are people who care about the fair trade movement and making trade fairer. And it started off with lots of hard work and outreach via LinkedIn and via kind of Pauline's contacts, which she had a huge number of outreach across the fair trade field, and we did really well. We gained around 100 supporters, core supporters at this time, who signed up as members and paid membership, or donated funds during the first couple of years. And these were sort of individuals and also institutions or social enterprises and fair trade organisations. So we had a lot of initial push, which was really great, from having people signed up, and those members had access to the Journal of Fair Trade, which was on JSTOR at that time, along with other membership kind of communications, and the Pluto Books discount, which is a great thing, which is a 40% discount off any Pluto book which is published. So those were the sort of thank you and pulling people together for their knowledge and input, and the funding obviously that came from the members who paid their membership dues or donated was a really useful pot of funds that was for launching the Journal of Fair Trade and its core activities, along with what the Journal of Fair Trade previously earned before it became open access. The Journal of Fair Trade previously earned via library subscriptions to Pluto journals, and that was for the Pluto journals portfolio via libraries. So Journal of Fair Trade did previously have this input of funding. Pauline, can we go to the next slide? Mm-hmm. So kind of just to recap again, I know some of you, I forgot to say from the very outset, a lot of you who are here today, thank you so much for being members of the Journal of Fair Trade Society. It's really great having your support, and lots of you have been core supporters since the very beginning, when we started in 2018, 2019 as well. So thank you, because what you may have previously donated or paid at some stage in membership or are ongoing, it's really valuable. So yeah, the vision of Journal of Fair Trade Society, its members are people who care about fair trade as ideal and practice, and see value in forming a community of ideas and knowledge around work and movement, the work of the movement, and communicating the importance of your knowledge and experience. So it's to do with the community having ideas and knowledge, either as academic research or as practical kind of on the ground practitioners, and sharing this amongst the community itself, but also going through into communicating it via the Journal of Fair Trade. We've got authors who are obviously part of the membership and are members of the community as well. So there's a lot of crossover. And so this is really the thing of the support that comes from the paid membership or donation, are really essential to the core activities of the Journal of Fair Trade operations, and they're even more crucial now than ever because in 2021 Journal of Fair Trade became open access, and at that point it stopped earning any funding via library subscriptions because of the fact that the journal became open access. We are now in a process of approaching academic libraries again to try and get them to resubscribe via an open access process called Subscribe to Open, but that's a slower process. So yeah, the Journal of Fair Trade Society, it's a really great group, again across the board, lots of individuals, and we're looking at this group being the group that runs and governs the Journal of Fair Trade itself. And as part of that, Pauline will tell you a bit more later, we're looking at new advisory board, to act alongside an editorial board, and obviously Pauline herself and other individuals as guardians of the Journal of Fair Trade and helping make its future stronger and make it more visible and credible. So there's a lot of kind of input from the Journal of Fair Trade Society group as a whole and what they can bring to the journal itself. I mean, aside from advisory board and editorial board, we really would love to have any of you to be members of the Journal of Fair Trade Society as members, but also then you can, offer yourself up, get involved either as a reviewer or translator, or if you feel that you might have some kind of knowledge of academic libraries who could be interested, that you could kind of champion the open access, subscribe to open model with an academic or an institution library that you know yourself. So there are so many ways that we can work together, and we can, having you as members of the Journal of Fair Trade Society is really useful, and you can be really active helping. So Pauline, can we move to the next?
I have.
Yeah. Sorry. So just on this one, it's a very quick thing to say. Obviously, we've got the mix of individual organisations, social enterprise, and donors as well. So you can see it currently we've got the mix, which is pretty much 3/4 are individual. We've got a really nice chunk of donors who have been organisations across kind of contact who've come forward to say they'd like to donate some finance towards activities, and lots of interesting organisations and social enterprises within the fair trade field and kind of linked. So we previously at the very beginning in 2018-19, we did have around 100 members, and what happened was there was a shift in the system when we had those 100 members, we were using PayPal, and they had all signed up, and we were all in communication with them. We had a really awkward moment where there was a new membership system, and it moved away from PayPal, and it meant that we then were asking original members if they would resubscribe on a new system, and it was a little bit difficult, I would say, to communicate that it was one ongoing payment was ending, and that we were asking people to move and subscribe again anew on a different system. And so we actually lost quite a lot of members in that process. So we've really only got probably a quarter or a little bit over a quarter, maybe a third back. So we're really now in a process where we're building up and to say to everyone here who's joined that we'd love you to resubscribe or subscribe as a member, as we really need you within the society to help govern the Journal of Fair Trade and finance, give some finance to core activities. And final is just to say, obviously, the website, if you haven't seen the Journal of Fair Trade website, we're on joff.org.uk, and it's got everything, a lot of information up there, and we have got pages to show about advisory group and editorial, and obviously then the membership, which is on /membership. Again, we'd really love to have you join up again, and there are some great benefits. Pluto Books particularly, with a 40% discount, which is valid against any of their books. And we've got a link here that just can give you an idea of what fair trade books in particular you could get on that discount. And obviously being part of the society and feeding into activities such as being overall involvement, knowledge, possibly if you wanted advisory board, to put yourself forward, and again, reviewers and translators, we're looking to put out notices to ask people if they'd like to sign up to those activities. And so the membership is an individual annual is £15 a year, organisation, social, enterprise, educational, not-for-profit is £45 a year, and the ethical business is £100 a year. So we generally we've got like a couple of organisation, social enterprise, and we're definitely looking to reach out with those areas, and also the ethical business, to sort of bring in larger groups, as well as the wealth of great individuals who are involved.
I just want to add something. Despite Brexit, you can actually pay in a variety of currencies. So I thought I would just add that.
Thank you, Pauline. Yes,
that do actually offer you some other options than pound sterling, just so that you know, we're reasonably international. Anyway, thank you, Ellie. I'm not going to take questions now. I'm going to let Eve, and then we'll have a little recap on that. You can stick questions in the chat. This is just an update, but please keep your questions, don't lose them. But let's get Eve. Then you've got our membership, our editorial board, and our readership updates, and then we can take a round of questions. Thank you. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.
Eve, are you up for this? Yay! Yay, thank you. Far away.
Sorry, forgot to unmute. Hi, everyone. I'm
Hi.
Eve. I'm the journals manager at Pluto Journals, and I'll just be talking a bit about open access and usage of the Journal of Fair Trade. So firstly, a bit about Pluto Journals. Pluto Journals is an independent publisher that operates as a non-profit organisation under the Pluto Educational Trust. Our mission is to push the boundaries of social science research by publishing a diverse range of cutting-edge peer-reviewed journals. The journals cover an array of pressing societal issues, including social justice, international law, human rights, and state crime. And we have recently launched new journals that explore topics such as Pan-Africanism, intersectionality, disability studies, and, of course, fair trade. In January 2021, we became the first social science publisher to make a full transition from the traditional subscription-based publishing to Diamond Open Access. And being a Diamond Open Access publisher means that we can provide readers with free and unrestricted access to all of our titles and articles, while also ensuring that our authors retain copyright over their work and they don't have to pay any article processing charges. Since our move to open access in 2021, our articles have been downloaded over 1 million times. This is a 650% increase in usage. So since the transition to Diamond Open Access, we've also seen a significant and sustained increase in the usage of the Journal of Fair Trade. And to give you an idea of the extent of this increase, in 2019, you can see that the articles were accessed 70 times. In 2020, this number increased to 83. However, in 2021, the first year of being open access, the articles were downloaded 12,634 times. This growth continued into 2022 with 17,084 article downloads recorded. And for 2023, just between January and April, we've had 6,178 downloads, which is amazing. In 2022, the journal was read most by readers from the following nations. So that's the US, the UK, Germany, France, Canada, China, India, the Netherlands, the Philippines, and Indonesia. And I've just put the top 10, there were loads more as well. And these statistics demonstrate the global reach and impact of the journal, and we're really, really pleased to see that readers from a really wide range of countries are accessing the research and engaging with fair trade. So how do we support open access publishing, and how will we do that moving forwards? At Pluto Journals, we're looking to build long-term relationships with research libraries that are committed to open access through the subscribe to open model that Ellie mentioned earlier. Our journals, including the Journal of Fair Trade, play a really important role in promoting bibliodiversity, especially in the social sciences. So collaborating with libraries will help us to ensure that our publications remain available for authors and readers in the long term. So as libraries make decisions about their journal subscriptions for the year, we really strongly encourage them to consider our collection. And if you support open access, we also ask that you reach out to the librarian at your institution, if you are affiliated with one, to express your support for the Journal of Fair Trade. Librarians play a really important role in supporting the research that comes out of their institutions. So we appreciate any effort to advocate for the journal and the Pluto Journals collection as well. You can find out more about us, open access, and subscribe to open on the Pluto Journals website. And you can read the Journal of Fair Trade on Science Open and JSTOR, as well as the rest of our collection. If you would like to keep up to date with what's going on at Pluto Journals, you can sign up to our newsletter, follow us on Twitter, and connect with us on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions about anything maybe related to Subscribe to Open, you can always email me. My email is there at the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you. So, any questions? Please just raise your hands for either Ellie or Eve on this sort of progress. Oops, I took off my camera. Nope. Are we good? I can't see everybody, so please just unmute yourself and speak. Yes, Meg.
Hi there. So I really love the idea of approaching my librarian about open access. I just wondered if you have, a best script to use, or what do you suggest as the most influential way? I mean, I can cite your stats, and it's a big university here, University of Maryland, but is there anything else?
Yeah, so if you send me an email, we can talk about this more, because I think it really works if you tailor it to the institution that you're at. So some institutions are the agent that works with us to make Subscribe to Open happen. They might already be in a discussion a bit with the librarian. So if they are, and then you talk to them as well, that's really, really helpful. So send me an email and then we can talk about it with Knowledge Unlatched and hopefully put forward a really good pitch. Yeah.
Lovely. I'm sure Eve would love to hear from any of you that might be able to forward a pitch or make the pitch. That would be perfect. Thank you. Anybody else? I can't see. Okay, let's go straight to Anne and the Fairtrade International Symposium. And I see a lot of people from the symposium grouping. So that's very nice. Welcome.
Yes,
Are
that
you
is
able
good.
to upload?
I'm just, I've done it in the wrong order. Share screen first, then hit the button. Now, can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
And I need to do the sharing piece. There we go. I just have to make sure everyone's picture's not in that corner.
So welcome, Professor Anne.
Thank you.
Congratulations. One we should celebrate when we can.
That's very kind of you. I've just realised my screen has everyone's picture on it in the corner. I'm just trying to.
No, that's all right. Then we can see ourselves.
You see,
we can see you perfectly.
You see me. I just on my screen. I've got the edges of people's faces, not the full of. Anyway, so you can hear me and you can see me. So thanks for the welcome, Pauline. So as Pauline says, my name's Anne Tallant. I'm a professor at the University of Leeds in the UK, and I am very happy to be part of the Fairtrade International Symposium's steering group. And as Pauline says, there's a few members of that steering group on the call with us today, Matthew and Roberta and Arizbe, and there might be another person, but they're the people I've spotted. And also I am organising the next iteration of the Fairtrade International Symposium, which is happening here in Leeds next month. And the next slide will show you some more about that. So the Fairtrade International Symposium, as it says on the slide here, there's the text from our website at the bottom here, kindly put together by the Fairtrade Advocacy Office. So this is a text where we describe ourselves as the leading global gathering for scholars, practitioners and policymakers working on fair trade. We organise a regular conference. It's not as regular as it used to be, more regular than it has been over the last few years. But we hope to have regular conferences bringing together parties across the world, looking at showcasing high quality research on fair trade. I like to think of the symposium as an academic conference with a difference, in that it is researchers, but also policymakers, practitioners of different kinds coming together to share knowledge and consolidate the collective knowledge on the subject of fair trade. So there are academics on the steering group but importantly, it also brings together some of the leading organisations on fair trade, including the World Fair Trade Organisation, Fair Trade International, and with the Fair Trade Advocacy Office, who've been very important in creating a space for us to share information about the symposium, hence that reference there. So the next meeting is in June, so the 19th to 21st of June. The last one we held was in 2020 online, and we had hoped for it to be in Mexico, but because of COVID, that wasn't possible. And it's just been, well, Leeds are standing in for the Mexican partners, a bit like Liverpool standing in for Ukraine with the Eurovision Song Contest. Because it wasn't possible to host it in Mexico. So, but we're very proud to be running this in person and online in June, so next month. So registration's open till next week. We held it open until after this event so that there'd be more opportunity for perhaps members of this and supporters of the Journal of Fair Trade to participate, whether it's online or in person. And I've put the links are in the agenda for how to join us. And we've got a LinkedIn and a Twitter as well. So please follow us. At the event, there will be talks from the leaders of fair trade organisations, academic papers like you would expect, and I think around 10 workshops organised by NGOs, fair trade organisations and academics, and including one with the Journal of Fair Trade, which is part of the partnership, this ongoing partnership that we're developing with the journal. And so Pauline and others will be organising a session to try and understand how we might consolidate that relationship with researchers and the Fair Trade International Symposium. And importantly, what we would like to do with the journal, and we're proposing, and this is the launch of it, is a special issue of the Journal of Fair Trade on the themes for the Fair Trade Symposium, the Fair Trade International Symposium this time, which we're calling Fair Trade Connections. So the special issue theme, as I say, we're thinking about fair trade and maybe going beyond the conventional fair trade, but also thinking how fair trade is connected with other movements, can draw on and learn from other movements. In terms of reshaping the discourse on sustainability and social justice, particularly through socially responsible business, social enterprise and supply chains. So we've got some questions that are motivating the special issue on this slide here. So how does fair trade influence and support wider alternative movements, organisations, activities, and vice versa? How can fair trade thinking benefit fair trade thinking and practice benefit from these complementary movements, and how can we establish connections and making sure that fair trade isn't seen as an isolated movement on its own, which it's not. It's want to make sure it's connected to these other movements on social and environmental justice. So there's more details on the theme and sub-themes. So at the conference, we will have sessions on environment, education for sustainable development, localizing the economy and different local interpretations of fair trade, sessions on climate change and learning, particularly from the climate justice movement, working with young people, social enterprise, and the connections between business, human rights and climate change. So there's more detail on the website about those themes that will take place at the conference, and also that we're encouraging papers on for the the special issue in the journal. So this is a call for people who are coming to the symposium or who might not be coming to the symposium. It is open. We are being inclusive. You don't have to come to Leeds or participate. We definitely love to see you. You don't have to be at the event at Leeds to be part of, to be considered for the special issue. But if you basically, it's meeting the themes. We're putting it together, suggesting a deadline of Monday, the 9th of October for submissions. Details on how to submit, I think we yet have to formalise that, but there will be instructions for authors that we're just putting together on the journal's pages. So key things are the Fair Trade Connections, the deadline of the 9th of October as to get things in. I'm going to be guest editing along with Roberta Dischetti and Matthew Anderson, who are here in partnership, of course, with our editor-in-chief, Pauline, and the others associated, reviewers who are linked to the journal. And see this as I put beginning of a partnership here. I think it's a consolidation of a partnership, and we want to take it to the next level. So that's what I wanted to say. That was my 4th slide, wasn't it? And
yes.
Open to questions.
Thank you. Any questions on this? Propositions?
What have I missed out? I think it's the how to. We need an email address to Pauline if there's anything more we can say about how to submit, but yeah. We've got till October.
Well, if it's any consolation, we always write up these meetings and do distribute what we've all discussed and what came up. So we'll make sure that the information is in that.
Excellent, thank you. Matthew's put his hand up.
Thank you.
Right, yeah, just to kind of reinforce, so with the special issue, in the same way that the symposium encourages that kind of collaboration and just sort of dialogue between practitioners and academics, we hope that the special issue can do the same. And so that may be through co-authorship, or it may be through other forms of collaboration. And we realise that can be sort of challenging, and it can lead to papers that perhaps look a bit different from standard academic papers, but we're very open to that. And also we are open to kind of discussions beforehand. So if you've got a paper idea, but you want to kind of contact us before you kind of put the time into developing it, yeah, we're open to yeah, to kind of reviewing some of those early ideas before you develop full papers. Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. That's born from experience of having edited previous special issues where I don't think the editorial approach was quite as inclusive as constructive. I don't want to say too much, but as we hope it will be with the Journal of Fair Trade. I think that's a key thing. It's having that conversation so that we produce something that's credible and useful and valid, but also is inclusive and brings in voices from all parts of the movement.
Thank you. Perfect. All right. I can't see everybody on one screen, so if I'm flipping around and you see me doing things, I'm just checking if there are any more hands. If you don't want to use the gizmo, you can just raise your hand like a human being, a real hand. No, we're good. I'm very much looking forward to this. It seems like we're the best home for the grouping that is in the symposium network, and I'm very happy. So we'll make it work.
We will. Thank you, Pauline.
Just as a nice footnote to that, I have been exploring and have had very positive feedback from Science Open about having translated versions. So if somebody's first language is French, although we will publish in English, we can actually, thanks to open access, we can do multiple languages. We just need to know ahead of time, so we're really certain about how we're going to warranty and sort of be assured that the companion other languages are checked, so that there's nothing weird going on between the English and the Chinese, or the English and the Spanish, or whatever. So that's all of this is coming together very nicely. Now let's go to something really cool. So I'm going to invite Sylvia and Tom and Pien, if Pien is here, from the Transnational Institute to make a presentation. I'm very proud of Volume 2. So if you Google Science Open, Journal of Fair Trade, Atypical Fair Trade, you'll find such an amazing set of essays and case studies on things that you don't normally think of as being fair, because in the public domain there's been a capture of the concept of fair around a very specific set of problems and standards, whereas in fact fairness is like a really universal thing. And it's always been a bit of a beef for me because I've worked myself on so many different kinds of products that never would have had a hope in hell of being certified by anybody. So I recommend that. And I'm very grateful to the three of you for stepping up for this. So I'm going to hand over and you can explain why you think cannabis can be fair or needs to be fair, even better. Sylvia, do you want to load up?
Yes, I'll kick off. Hi, everyone. My name is Sylvia Kay, and I work at the Transnational Institute, as Pauline mentioned. I'm really thrilled to be here. It's really nice of you to invite us. I'm here with my colleague, Tom Blickman. I think Pien unfortunately won't be able to make it, so I think it'll just be us two representing TNI on the call. Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, actually, it's really nice to be here and to collaborate with a journal such as the Journal of Fair Trade, which is open access and member run or member supported, because I think it fits very much with the ethos of TNI as a think tank that wants to popularize ideas and knowledge across the world of policy, practice, academia, and very much also the world of activism and social movements. Are one of our key audiences of the research that we do, which is a lot of it is collaborative research with social movements and grassroots organizations, is really to have that kind of accessibility of knowledge for those key audiences. So I think it's been a very nice collaboration also with that in mind. So Pauline asked me to sort of speak a bit around or present some of the key arguments of this article that we submitted as TNI, which I helped to write together with my colleague Martin Jelsma, and also David Bewley-Taylor, who's a close ally of TNI, but is based at the University of Swansea in Wales, in the UK. And the title of our article was called Fair Trade Cannabis, a roadmap for meeting the socio-economic needs and interests of small untraditional growers. And it was included, as Pauline had mentioned, in Volume 2, Issue 1, which was published in 2020, which was this kind of collection of articles dealing with kind of atypical fair trade products. So I prepared a little PowerPoint just to kind of talk through some of the kind of motivations and the context and the arguments in that article, which I thought would just be a nice kind of kickoff point for discussion. So I'll just share my screen. Here we go. From start, I think. Yeah. So the question I'm responding to is this question, can anything be traded fairly? The case for fair trade cannabis. And the article, I should say, was very much inspired by TNI's work over decades, as Pauline has mentioned, on this issue of drug policy and drug policy reform. And just to embed a bit TNI's research and approach in the production also of this article, we work across many different levels or scales. So we work at UN level on drug policy reform, particularly at this UN Committee on Narcotic Drugs, which is the key UN body dealing with drug policy making. We also convene what are called sort of international drug policy dialogues, which are kind of meetings where we convene, we play a convening role, organizing sort of Chatham House style meetings with drug policymakers from different countries and connecting them with other expert inputs and connecting them with grassroots organizations. And we very much work also with growers of illicit crops, not just cannabis, but also opium poppy and coca. And we do that in different parts of the world. So that's kind of the triangulation of different spheres and scales at which TNI works on this particular issue. And it's led to a series of publications. I've just highlighted a few here that touch on the issue of cannabis, which also, some of which were referenced in the journal article. But yeah, what is the case that we try to put forward for thinking of cannabis in a kind of fair trade context? I think it really kind of centers on two key lines of argumentation. The first one is around recognizing the harms that the current, what's called global prohibitionist regime around drugs has engendered. And then the second is on the injustices, actually, that we see in the transition from illicit to licit markets. So the kind of injustice that we see in models of legal regulation of cannabis. So I'll just set out those two lines of argumentation very, very briefly. Obviously, I won't go into the whole colonial and racist roots of the current drug control regime, which kind of lay the foundation for prohibition. But very briefly, I mean, there is cannabis remains, as outlined in the 1961 UN Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. It remains scheduled as an illegal and dangerous drug without any medical benefit or use value. And so this has really led to this kind of, ongoing illegal, illicit nature of cannabis, and which has meant that the livelihoods of millions of poor people around the world who depend on the cultivation of cannabis and other drug crops for their livelihoods, essentially their subsistence economies, their poverty has been criminalized, along with the ways in which cannabis has been used also in many traditional religious and cultural practices of communities around the world, particularly communities in the global south. It's led to a number of, it's led to violence and human rights violations that have accompanied this kind of militarized war on drugs and incarcerated millions for low-level drug offenses. It's sustained an extensive illicit market with profits concentrated in the hands of transnational organized crime groups. And it also has wasted resources. There's a huge opportunity cost to prohibition in terms of approaches, which is called alternative development, sort of approaches that have tried to offer alternative livelihoods for those that are engaged in the drug economy to licit, often agricultural activities. But in the case of cannabis, those approaches have really not been successful. And so there's been a big kind of, opportunity cost in terms of foregone income opportunities, and foregone opportunities also in the medical sphere of patient access to cannabis-based medicines. So that's kind of the harms of the kind of prohibitionist model, which has a huge cost to it. One would then assume that there's kind of the answer would be that a kind of switch to what's called a regulated market or a legal market. And we have sort of seen in sort of particularly starting in sort of 2013 onwards, a kind of wave of shift towards legal regulation of cannabis in various jurisdictions, both for medical use and for what's called adult use or recreational or non-medical use. We've seen countries such as Uruguay in 2013, the US state of California in 2016, Canada notably in 2018, and many others have followed with various forms of regulation. But what have we seen with this switch to a legal market? We've seen what has been called this kind of green rush, which is a way to signify this kind of huge flood of investment, a lot of it corporate investment, into emerging licit cannabis markets, which really is, a lot of it has been sustained also by quite a bit of speculative capital. There's been a lot of booms and busts. And it's really concentrated profits and wealth into what is now the kind of global cannabis industry, dominated, as you see by this table, by companies from North America, principally the US and Canada. And you can see the kind of huge scale of profits, or at least market capitalization of some of those companies. And the question then is, how has this benefited those that have been previously criminalized by the war on drugs or global prohibition, and have they really been able to benefit from this transition to a regulated market? And that's kind of where this question of what would a fair trade cannabis model then look like. And the crux of the journal article that we submitted and which was published was really this argument that the focus of fair trade cannabis must be to empower small and traditional producers in the cannabis trade based on a number of first order principles, market strategies, and public policies. And a lot of the article kind of goes into further depth and detail of what those first order principles are, what those market strategies, some examples of those market strategies, and some examples of public policies. I won't go into full detail of all of them, just to say that a lot of the first order principles were inspired also by many of the principles of fair trade and that are laid out in the Fair Trade Charter. So principles around community empowerment, labor rights, issues of gender empowerment, fair pricing, obviously, this kind of notion of a social premium and investment in local community development, environmental justice. Those were kind of key principles that we hit. I did just want to then, because that's also then the in-depth, what the rest of the article goes into, we provide some examples to really show how some of those first order principles, those fair trade principles, if you wish, could be enacted. And we set out in a little bit in synthetic form in the article, but backed up with some examples, strategies for which public policies can be crafted to lessen the barriers to entry for small and traditional growers in the cannabis markets and raise barriers to entries for example, bigger corporations and foreign investors that are trying to monopolize the space. And so we kind of go through and detail some of those more in depth in the article. I won't go into this table just now, but yeah, if you want to, you can read more in the article, and maybe my colleague Tom can also provide some examples if people are interested. But I thought it would be, I just wanted to end on this note of obviously challenges when it comes to thinking about cannabis from a perspective of fair trade or from a perspective of social and environmental justice. Because it is a very, challenging issue to think about. And I just wanted, this is not a non-exhaustive list, but this is just some of the challenges that I think are some of the main challenges that we've identified. I mean, obviously, and some of this is unique to the cannabis or an illicit product, and some of these may resonate with other more typical fair trade products and commodities. But in terms of cannabis, I mean, obviously we see ongoing stigma and criminalization. I mean, yes, there has been a wave of legal regulation, but there's still very much an entrenched, cultural and legal stigma and criminalization. There is the global prohibition hasn't ended, so there's very much cannabis at international level, at global level, remains an illegal substance. And so that makes this kind of trade components very difficult, highly complex. For example, it really is difficult to find jurisdictions as well in which cannabis can transit between the home country and the destination country. There are also issues around banking and finance, which are very complicated if countries don't have what are called correspondent banking regulations in place. So the whole flow of money and can be shut down. And there's kind of whole issues around securitization, financing of crime and terrorism, which some of this links into. And as a result, actually, I don't have the exact figures, but very little actual international trade of cannabis has taken place as a result. I think a lot of countries are moving more towards an import substitution model rather than a trading model. Another huge issue is these costs of compliance for smaller growers in particular. There's a huge bureaucratic and regulatory hurdle that they need to clear to become licensed growers, and often many growers actually cite this kind of cumbersome bureaucracy as one of the main reasons they're shut out from legal markets. They have to invest in security cameras, they have to invest in fencing, they have to do lots of administration around track and trace systems, because everything needs to be controlled at every step of the way in terms of the cannabis value chain. So there's a huge regulatory burden. There's also a lack of what I would call a kind of lack of strategic vision by governments and regulators. A lot of governments see cannabis mostly as just a way to attract investment. They don't see it as a development opportunity, and it's sort of invite investment first, ask questions later approach. There's not really a strategic vision and a proposal for how a cannabis market can develop more broadly beyond a sort of more extractivist model. And then I think, and this is perhaps particularly one I would also be curious to know a little bit more from the fair trade community about, is also this question is do cannabis consumers or cannabis patients care about ethically sourced cannabis? How does one foster that in that space? There's a whole plethora of kind of voluntary labeling and certification schemes in the cannabis industry, but it's quite unclear how those claims are verified. And it's also unclear, there's been a little bit of research, but it's also unclear to what extent there is a consumer demand for ethical, so-called ethical or fair trade cannabis. So that kind of consumer side of things is also something worthwhile thinking a bit more about in terms of prospects for fair trade or fairer trade cannabis. So that's a little bit, I hope to have given a little bit of insight into the article. And if anyone has any questions, or Tom, if you want to add something more from some experiences you've been engaged in, I know in Morocco and in Germany, please also feel free.
Yeah. It's actually an interesting time around cannabis. It's a time full of paradoxes. Actually, cannabis is one of the most controlled commodities, or supposed to be one of the most controlled commodities in the world. Recreational cannabis is not allowed, so that shouldn't be there. And medical cannabis is very strictly controlled. But yeah, in practice, it's actually a free market, an illicit free market. And the discussion now is going from the prohibition-based regime towards the question whether or not cannabis should be legalized is more and more going to how should cannabis be legalized, and there the whole issue of trade and fairness in production comes into, and you have very, very strange things happening. So, for instance, because of all the difficulties that Sylvia was already talking about with the conventions, is actually, in particular around recreational cannabis, there is no international trade officially. Between, of course, unofficially, there is a lot of international trade, smuggling going on for decades already. And what you can see happen now is that the countries who want to legally regulate cannabis are doing so domestically. So because of all these complicated technical legal issues with the conventions and European law also, they basically say, well, we don't want this. We keep it completely domestical. So the production has to take place and the cultivation has to take place in country, and we're not going to allow import and export, which paradoxically has the effect that for a lot of, for instance, to give an example, in the Netherlands, there's now an experiment for regulating regulated supply of cannabis to the coffee shops. And nowadays, or in the past, 20% of that market was still hashish coming from Morocco or Lebanon. But now to be able to be part of the regulation, producers have to produce hashish in order to cut off the illegal import from Morocco and Lebanon and other countries. So what you see happening is that actually illegal regulation leads to problems for the small traditional growers of cannabis who are now who have supplied that market for decades with a lot of risk for them, for themselves and their families and their livelihoods, and now are cut off of the new emerging regulated legal markets. So yeah, that's one of the issues we work a lot on how to deal with these complicated legal, technical, and complicated political questions there, that is something maybe a lot that is still not solved. And what you see happening now also is that because of the corporate capture of the market, you see, in fact, the intention was for the people who are in favor of legal regulation to actually decolonize the whole industry. But what is happening now, you see a recolonization. You see a lot of investment, for instance, in African countries now by North American or European companies first in the production of medical cannabis, and they get licenses from African governments. Well, that medical cannabis is only for export; it's not for the country, for the people in the country itself. And then it's also cutting off these markets, potentially these markets for traditional farmers to also enter that market. So yeah, for the moment it's a very confused transition period. We're actually in a limbo. There is no international agreement among countries that do want to legally regulate cannabis on how to go about with it. But basically, everybody is doing it on its own. There's for years, for decades, we were saying, well, if you want to do this, you have to form a like-minded group of countries and set up some kind of system that works, that is sustainable, and that is based on fair trade, that is environmentally friendly, but nobody wants to go in there because they think it's a political risk in their international relations. Just to give some examples on what the difficulties are right now. But we also want to be positive. So there are more and more countries now saying that they're going to regulate cannabis, and it remains to be seen how that will develop. There are actually, broadly speaking, two models. One is based on what Sylvia was already explaining, a very expensive capitalist commercial model, but there is also another a model that is more based on public health and harm reduction approaches. And that's what you see, for instance, in Uruguay, where you can either have home cultivation or you have collective cultivation in cannabis social clubs, or the state-controlled cannabis is sold through pharmacy. So that's a very strictly controlled market, and there's not driven by corporate interest. And what you can see happening now in Europe, at least, it's going a little bit towards that model, and I think that is something to build on, and also try to engage European countries to start engaging countries from the global south where there is traditional cannabis growing, to also allow them into these markets also because of environmental issues. Why grow cannabis indoors with a lot of energy that is needed from these high volume lamps, when you can grow it outdoors in the sun in countries where that is possible. So
Thank
yeah.
you, Tom. I'm going to stop you and
I can
I
talk
would
for hours.
welcome, I would welcome any contributions, because there are lots of really fascinating things in there, including what is the message of fair trade to consumers who consumes cannabis, and remembering that a large proportion of the new market, the illicit market, is medical, and does fair trade fit into things like that? So I'm just going to open it up, and really we won't be able to cover off lots of things, but I'm happy we got started, and please feel free to take up things directly with the team at TNI. So I've got Indro, you're in my top left-hand corner, then Meg.
Yes, I just wanted to make the comment, Sylvia mentioned that what do ethical consumers want? And I do think that this whole cannabis thing, consumer demand really drives it all. When you say cannabis, it's to me, it's a very funny word, because I'll tell you why. Right now, there's a huge demand for hemp fabric and anything made with hemp fabric, bags or shirts or clothing or whatever with hemp fabric. And hemp also comes from the cannabis plant. The difference is that the THC level of hemp is less than 0.3%. And if it's above 0.3%, then you smoke it instead of wearing it. That's the only difference. But really, the whole hemp fabric and hemp bags are coming from the same cannabis plant. And in India, for example, the whole cannabis hemp thing was banned by the government for years and years and years. And now, I don't know why, all of a sudden, they are allowing cannabis growing in some of the northern states, in some of the hilly states, and they're making hemp fabric, hemp fibers from that cannabis plant in small quantities, of course, and we are using that to make, bags and pouches and things like that, which is being fairly traded. And why is it being fairly traded? Because there is a huge demand for it from consumers, ethical consumers in America and in Europe. So this whole, these are demand-driven issues. Governments are smart enough to see that if there's enough consumers for something, they will want to regulate it and allow it, essentially. So, when I hear cannabis, to me, it's ironical because hemp is the in thing right now, and it's the same cannabis sativa plant, which, you grow it a little differently, you can smoke it.
Thank you, Indro. Meg.
Oh, thank you. That was fascinating. I had a question about the US is pretty confused with incarceration. My son works on wrongful incarceration cases a lot as a lawyer. I'm seeing there were still 250,000 arrests for marijuana possession in the US just last year. So I was just wondering, how that balances. I think this is fascinating. I think raising awareness about this is number one, about fair trade cannabis as all the problems that are caused by it not being. But just wondering also how you balance that with all the legality issues. Really difficult. Sorry, that's a really hard question.
Any more questions? And then we'll let Sylvia and Tom wrap up and try and answer or comment or ask for collaboration or whatever they want. Any more? I can't see any more hands. Okay, Sylvia, you there?
Yeah, and there I was just thinking how to respond. It is because it is a big question. So I think fair trade cannot advance without also and also a commitment to restorative justice. Especially for those that have been on the front lines of the war on drugs, and particularly low-income communities, minority communities, that have really been have suffered or borne the brunt of this kind of draconian approach. And so, alongside kind of notions of fair trade, there has to be also we've seen a number of countries have done this, the kind of a commitment towards expungement of prior criminal records, or a kind of amnesty process to allow people to transition from the illicit to the licit market. Because yeah, you can't on one hand advance kind of notions of fair trade while you're still people are still fearful of persecution, of criminalization, of arrests, of other forms of intimidation and violence. So that is number one, restorative justice, expungement, amnesty, legal reform. But obviously that's a big package of a set of issues. Another is, the US in particular is a very complicated context, because you have, Tom will probably have the exact number at his fingertips, but something in the order of over 35 states have, in the US, have moved towards some kind of regulated market, either for medical or adult use cannabis. But of course, it remains prohibited at the federal level. And this creates this kind of quite interesting mishmash of what's, models, which is problematic to some extent, but it's also helpful in the sense that you can kind of look towards more positive models which have emerged. I attended back in November. I was actually in the US for an event on cannabis and social justice, which looked at some of these models in different US states. And for example, the state of New Jersey, they have their model for regulated cannabis is that there's a commitment, and more than a commitment, a law, that 70% of the revenue that is collected from cannabis sales and the issuance of licenses, 70% of that revenue that is generated from that has to be invested back into either Black-owned or minority-owned businesses, as a recognition of the prior injustice and harm that was done by the previous model of illegality. So that is one model which is quite interesting, to popularize and uplift, and as one example. But what was also quite interesting at that meeting is that because the meeting also included small cannabis business owners and growers from the US, they were terrified of opening up. They were terrified of federal legalization, because in a weird way, having only cannabis legalized in particular states offered a level of protection for their particular markets, and so they were fearful of them being subjected to greater competition for what would then be called multi-state operators, larger commercial enterprises. And then a step further than that, if the US were then to be more open towards trade in international cannabis, they were then fearful of even greater competition from the global South. So there was a spirit and commitment to notionally to principles of social justice, but there was also this very much concern about what that would mean for, so the ways in which actually illegality can provide cover and protection in some ways for some, for some people as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe on the issue of hemp, hemp is actually not illegal. So industrial hemp is excluded from the prohibitions in the convention. So yeah, it's easy to trade on that, and yeah, that might even also extend to CBD products for the medical market. It is also low THC and made from hemp. So yeah, there are opportunities there, and that might be a good testing ground for fair trade models there, that then could eventually expand to the recreational market.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, TNI people. Of course, I have a vested interest. I should declare my conflict of interest. Until last October, I was the chair, but I'm not anymore. So I'm free of my conflict of interest. But at the time, I had a conflict, but I didn't review it. So thank you so much, everybody. I've got a few kind of words I want to share about what's happening next and what's coming up our priority list. But we've got a few, that will take me 1 minute. So I just want to make sure if anybody wants to kind of raise something or put something on our agenda, you can write it in the chat or just speak out now. We've got some minutes left. I was hoping for that. Upcoming things or things you want to that you want to raise or flag or think we should have been talking about. We're always open to advice and criticism too. So please do just speak out or raise your hand, or things you want us to tell you about. If not now, then between now and our next meeting in November. Very quiet. All right. So I'll continue to set out our route map, and you can hopefully tell me if I have missed something later. So let me just share. There we go. So we will, as I said, we always write up these things, these sessions that we have. We now have a bit of a routine, May and November. And the first week of November, it's basically the first Thursday of November, which this year is the 2nd of November. So I'm asking you to put that in your diary. And apart from updates, we'll always be giving you updates, factual updates. The main conversations that we want to have, and they're really, really important ones, are the idea of an advisory board, this guardianship, stewardship body that can basically look after the Journal of Fair Trade and help to build this community going forward. This is in case I fall under a bus, of course, or equivalent. But it's much more important than that, because I think what the readership shows, and what you didn't see in Eve's presentation, but I get the usage reports. And what I see is universities, colleges, institutions all over the globe. There's practically no country on earth where somebody has not read something from the Journal of Fair Trade. So I know we showed the top 10, but even in that list, I'm always delighted to see that it's not all the usual suspects. I mean, I think it's brilliant that a lot of the academic community in the US is really promoting and articles and perhaps directing students to our journal. But I'm also equally excited when I see that 600 people in China read something from the Journal of Fair Trade. Now, what open access does is it gives you amazing data. So you can see right down to the institution. You don't know who it was. And so that gives me a great deal of encouragement that the word and the accessibility is important and is really making this a very global platform. That makes me quite excited. I want to just set out what I've agreed to do, the process so far, since we're trying to do this properly and seriously, is I've agreed with, and Zeren is here and she may or may not want to say something, but I've agreed to collaborate with the WFTO, and a number of other people have also said they would like to input, and you are all welcome, and you can just let me know. We're going to develop a paper which sets out what that advisory board is for, how to be on it, should it be elected, do we need that kind of politics, who knows. We'll figure something out, and we will share that with you over the summer for your information, for your feedback, for your additions, and then we will have that as an important discussion in our November meeting, the advisory board, who's going to be the guardian of this initiative in years to come. So that's one strand of work that's come right up my to-do list. and the other is fundraising. So I suppose my naive vision when we went open access was, okay, if we have like 400 or 500 members, we can probably cover our running costs. I'm still trying to work out whether that's true, and we don't yet have 400 or 500 members. So I would urge you all to click on one of our very easy multi-currency buttons and have a go. But I also want to start collecting and agreeing a number of projects and partnerships that have come up between now and November, so that we can share those and more people can comment on them or participate in them or help us fundraise for them, if it's something that their institution or their networks might really love. So I want to share the sort of budgetary vision and future and challenge, at the same time as reaching out on a number of projects for your input and, you know, levels of excitement, collaborations and partnerships, ideas. Some of them are mine, some of them have come from other people. And again, you are all welcome to write and say, we should be doing this, you know, and maybe it's how we convert and help traditional producers of cannabis to produce hemp. No, I haven't come up with that one. But that's something I want to share between now and November, and that would be a very critical moment to look at the advisory board, to look at our projects, our partnerships, prospects, and how we can raise funds to support more work, more outreach, more thinking, more sharing. So that's my roadmap between now and November. Any final messages? Otherwise, we'll close. We've got some messages. People are off, very informative speakers. We should continue to have speakers, I think. It's always useful. Partnership, and we can have some discussion about the partnership at FTIS in June. Yes, we will. We're going to discuss more about what we can do with FTIS as one of the partners. Another partnership I've let them down a bit is the Fairtrade Towns International movement, but I'm ready to restart on that one. There's only so many hours in the day. So on that note, thank you so much for coming. Sally, farewell. Stay in touch. And please be in touch if you have anything you want to add or say or think we should be doing. You are most welcome. 2nd of November, see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline.
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Pauline.